to spiritual practice in a way was through recovery, obviously. Get into recovery, trying to stop suffering, let's say. Yeah, trying to stop suffering. So I feel this happens for most people too, that when they come towards, let's say, spiritual practice or something, they're coming towards it as the head, as the mental. So they're approaching spiritual practice as the mental. Now there's the saying, or what this the head is saying it's looking for is happiness or peace, let's say. But most of the time, I've noticed that it's looking for pleasure. So for most of the spiritual practice or seeking or whatever that I've experienced, even my own experience, is the head was actually coming in looking for pleasure or happiness. This is how it was labeling it. It was looking for pleasure labeled as happiness, let's say, or peace. But really the mental system is just looking for more pleasure, which in a way is its own form of addiction. So it's like the addiction goes from the alcohol, now it's going to go to spirituality as the vessel of pleasure. So I feel this happens a lot. People come to spiritual ideas or practice or whatever as the mental system. That mental system says, I'm looking for happiness or peace. But what the mental system is actually looking for is pleasure. So it's looking to get out of things that are unpleasurable and into only pleasure. And the head is trying to stabilize what it's taking to be pleasurable. And it's trying to stabilize not being involved in what's unpleasurable. But the mental system is dualistic, yeah? So it's constantly bouncing between these two things. And it's searching for more pleasure, less displeasure. So it sees spiritual practice and it hears something like, you are peace. And then the mental system goes, okay, I'm going to become peace, which is going to be constant pleasure from its point of view, yes, because it can only experience pleasure or displeasure. It can't actually sit into peace because the head is anxious. It's going back and forth. So it comes to spiritual practice. Let's say it gets a little bit of relaxation in the body, pleasure. So now the head is just looking for more of that pleasure. Yeah. But what we really don't see is it's actually just trying to get away from displeasure. And it's caught in this duality and it's trying to stabilize in one side of two-ness. But its nature is two-ness, so it's going to bounce back and forth. Now, the trying to stabilize in pleasure obviously doesn't work. So the person is seemingly saying that they're constantly failing. And it's the head that's constantly failing. It's constantly failing at always attaining pleasure and staying away from displeasure because it can't get outside its own duality. But the mental system is seeing spiritual practice as a way out, let's say. But it's seeing it from a dualistic place. The head can't get out of itself, you see? Self can't get out of self, as they say in recovery. So it can't stabilize in pleasure, and it can't get out of the system of pleasure-displeasure. It's going to keep trying, and if we're identified as it, we'll seemingly continually fail at that, because it can't happen. Yeah? So the happiness or peace, which the head thinks it's trying to get when it's really just trying to stabilize in pleasure, is our nature, yeah? So this movement of pleasure, displeasure that the mental system is constantly bouncing in between, you are before that, or let's say you are the space in which that arises in. Yeah. Now that space is peace. So our nature, let's say, is peace, and then individuality appears within peace. That individuality comes with a duality of its experiences of pleasure and displeasure. That individuality hears about spirituality and thinks that it's going to then stabilize in pleasure. And that's not going to work, at least in my experience. So really the freedom is from, it's not as. So seeing that the head experiences pleasure and displeasure, and then seeing that you can disentangle from that, essentially. Uh, Now, the thing is, in spiritual practice, if there's a movement of trying to stabilize in peace, meaning stop the head or pause it somehow in order so it can just experience the pleasure of stillness, which it can't stay in for very long. Yeah, like has the head ever stopped for more than 3 seconds, kind of thing? No. It's a suppression of the mental system. It's a compression of it. Yeah. So we're trying to, there's this mental system, let's say, that's bouncing back and forth pleasure, displeasure, experience, this. Yeah. If we try, if there's an attempt to try to still that or stabilize it into a pleasurable state, that means you're suppressing its movement. You're not allowing the mental system to move. So by meditating, I'm trying to hold it still. And it doesn't hold still, so you think you're failing, but really it's the mental system can't hold still because it's bouncing back and forth with all these ideas. Nah. So, right, lost my train of thought there. The thing is, you see, you are the piece in which that moves through. So if you're identified as the head and you're trying to get out of the head as the head, that is actually suppressing the movement. That's what we were saying, the suppression, yeah? You can't compress experience and expect to get free, whatever that might mean. You can't sit back into the space in which everything is moving by compressing what's moving, because that puts you there as the one who's trying to get pleasure or get out of displeasure. And that sense of you-ness, the identification as self, has the whole thing bound essentially and stuck. Yeah. Hmm. But I feel the real important thing is to see that when the mental system is talking about I'm going to get happy or I'm going to make myself more peaceful, it's most of the time it's looking just for pleasure, which means it's suppressing the movement because it's trying to get out of displeasure. So it's like I'm going to stop experiencing this and I'm only going to experience this. To the mental system, that's would be called happiness or peace. Yeah. Now it's a mistaken movement because the mental system cannot stabilize in one side of the duality that it's in. Yeah. Self cannot get out of self. Its nature is to bounce back and forth. It's going to judge, it's going to compare, and it's going to be self centered because that's its nature, to be centered on itself. You see? So we need to see that movement, that when the head is going, oh, I'm going to get peace or happiness, I'm going to go on vacations constantly, and that will give me peace and happiness. It won't, because the other side, which would, let's call it displeasure, is part of this experience of the body. And if we try to live in one, then we're suppressing the other. And that suppression actually binds us more to the movement of pleasure and displeasure. So it would be much better to see that the head is constantly looking for pleasure and it's trying to get out of displeasure and know and seeing it and negating it. Not suppressing it, not denying it, not even trying to change it, but just negating it. Meaning like listening, letting it move through without touching. Use the word acceptance, use the word disentangle, use the word letting go. I don't care, it doesn't matter. But see it in its all of its glory of the head trying to just get pleasure and calling it peace, and see that it's mistaken and let that whole thing play out, and it will be revealed that you are not that. Yeah, and then what you sit back in is to what you are looking for, because you are what you're looking for. The seeker is the sought. I think it's the St. Francis Xavier thing. Because the screen on which the movie of pleasure and displeasure plays is never touched by the movie. Yeah. And then you can watch the head. You can watch its movement. Oh, I need to do this more to get to get this more and get out of this more, whatever those two things are, yeah? You can just see it happen. And then you'll notice if you try to go with it, if you try to get more of pleasure and less displeasure, you get more bound up because you're suppressing its movement. It's like trying to stop the flow of a river in a way. Yeah? You're like the rock. The sense of you is like the rock in the middle of the river. Uh, because the freedom is from, it's not as. And I've noticed this in my own head is like it goes for more something as an idea that that's going to bring peace, like more money, more whatever, you know? And that would mean that if there's more of that, there's less of this. Let's say, like anxiety. There's less whatever. There's less of a feeling of not being worth or something like this. Yeah? So if I get more of this, there will be less of this. This is the head's movement. If I meditate more, there's going to be less bad thoughts, and then there will be no bad thoughts. I'll just stabilize in good thought, let's say. But this is not the nature of the head. And if the more you try to get more of that for pleasure and less of that, it's going to tighten the system because you're suppressing this free flowing river of back and forth by inherently being identified as it, because it's going to keep trying. The mental system is going to keep trying to get more of this and get less of this. Yeah. That is like my experience of addiction, essentially. Get more booze so there's less depression. Now that obviously didn't work. Let's get more money and then there's less feelings of no worth. Yeah? It's the same movement. Get more spiritual information, yeah, and then you'll know yourself out of discomfort. But getting more spiritual information is reifying your attachment to being the knower. And then when pleasure and displeasure come, you see you're more bound to it. And then the head's movement to that discomfort is get more pleasure. So it just keeps pushing for more pleasure and less displeasure. More comfort, less discomfort. But the nature of this system is comfort, discomfort, comfort, discomfort, comfort, discomfort. Yes? Who is that system arising to is the question. And the more we go with trying to get more comfort and less discomfort, the more we're bound to being the one who that's arising to. And which means we're bound to the movement of comfort, discomfort, comfort, discomfort. But the peace, the happiness, whatever you want to call it, spacious awareness, is before that. That movement back and forth is not going to stabilize in the center. It can't do it. It's dualistic. You are the space, let's say, that is moving through. So, in a very intimate way, it is by noticing all of the different ways that the head moves that you can then meet it with just acceptance or letting go of your grip on it, because you see how it moves, yes? And then you simply meet it with I'm not that, which would be the negation of the movement. It's not seeing the movement back, comfort, discomfort, I want this, I don't want that. It's not seeing that movement and messing with it, trying to actually stabilize in what you want and get away from what you don't want. That is not what this is about in my experience. It's seeing all the different ways that it does that, inquiring who it arises to, and then letting it like formulate and go through. Yes? And then you see that it's a false movement, essentially. It doesn't exist. It's just all these different faces of the mental system trying to get out of itself in which it can't do. But if you're identified as it, you're going to be trying to get out of self, individual, individuality or whatever as it, and it can't do it. So you're going to keep failing, which is just going to motivate more pushing towards more pleasure, more meditation, more retreats, more blah, 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 on and on and on. Yeah. And that will continue because the mental system's just going to keep going this way. Yeah. So if we're tied to it, then we're tied to this movement, and that gets very uncomfortable. Drives people to drug and drink and sex and gamble and whatever else. More pleasure, you see? They're trying to get pleasure and out of displeasure. But it won't stabilize into peace, into what you are, because you are what you're looking for. But it is not by suppressing that movement back and forth. This is why I feel settling downward in the body is very important, so that you're not that movement back and forth isn't too loud, and then inquiring into who it arises to. Yes? Or simply negating the movement. You could say negating would be listening without touching, staying disentangled from the movement, so you can really see it play. Because you are the space in which it moves through, and that mental movement cannot become space. Let's say, in a sense, yeah. It's going to continue to try to, because it's looking for pleasure. But the space in which the pleasure displeasure moves through is peace. You are that peace. Yes? And in a very ironic way, the movement of pleasure, displeasure, and the sense of individuality all comes out of that space. So really, there's nothing separate from what you are as consciousness or spacious awareness or whatever. But seeing how all the different ways the mental system presents its stories and tries to get out of displeasure and into pleasure is very important in the way that it can then be negated. Yeah? Not to try to change it or alter it, but to just simply see it. And what can be perceived is not what is perceiving. You can perceive the head enter into, let's say, spiritual practice saying, I want more peace. You can see the mental system do that. You can see the body tighten when you go with that movement. Because you are what you're looking for. So if there's something looking for what you are, that must not be your nature. But you can't suppress or hold down the sense of individuality, which would be the searching, let's say, for pleasure and out of displeasure. You sit back in a way. You disentangle from it so it can really play itself through. And then you see it as a non-existent movement. And then you stop going with that. But it's not listened or heard to as separate. That's like the beauty of it. But to put that into concept wouldn't make sense. We can really only put into concept what can be put into concept here, which is all the different ways that individuality pops up and seemingly distorts the experience of, not the experience, but the fact of wholeness, let's say. Because if you go with the mental system, looking just for pleasure, you're going to end up suppressing a ton of your experience as an individual. A ton of it. Suppressing thoughts, suppressing emotions, suppressing beliefs and things. Now, those beliefs and things aren't inherently your true nature, but if they're suppressed, then it's really tying you to them by compressing or suppressing. Compressing, suppressing, whatever you want to say. So I feel it's important to see what the head is doing when it comes towards a lot of things in life, that it's looking for pleasure and it's trying to stabilize in pleasure. It's calling it peace or happiness, but really it's pleasure. And really it can't stabilize in it. because it's dualistic. Ah,